Hi, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin with an update now on a story we brought you on yesterday's newscast. Ontario's police watchdog was already investigating an incident in Kenora after a woman went into medical distress while in police custody. The Special Investigations Unit now says that woman has died. 46-year-old was arrested this past Saturday by an OPP officer on an outstanding warrant. She was transported to the Kenora detachment and lodged in a cell. The SIU says in the early morning hours of Sunday, the woman went into medical distress. First aid was administered and paramedics transported her to hospital where she was put on a ventilator. At 5:17 p.m., the woman was pronounced deceased. The SIU says 3 investigators and 2 forensic investigators have been assigned to the case. A post-mortem took place on Wednesday. Manitoba RCMP are investigating a fire that destroyed a Northern First Nations new band office over the weekend. RCMP say the fire was started at the back of the building but are unsure how it was done. Bonabonaby Cree Nation Chief Richard Hart told the Winnipeg Free Press he believes the fire was set in retaliation to the war on drugs he and other leaders are waging. Oxford House RCMP were called to the Bonabonaby Cree Nation band office at 5 a.m. Sunday morning. When officers arrived, the band office became engulfed in flames and was completely destroyed. No injuries were reported, and the RCMP say the cause of the fire was arson. Anyone with information is asked to contact RCMP or Crime Stoppers. Bonabonaby is a fly-in community more than 500 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. 2 remote First Nations are at the front of a class action lawsuit that's currently playing out in a Manitoba courtroom this week. The National First Nations Housing Class Action Lawsuit claims Canada has failed to provide safe and adequate housing for those living on reserve. With more, here's APTN's TR Wheatley.
On the steps of the Anishinaabe Ogamawan offices in downtown Winnipeg, families from St. Teresa Point, Manitoba and Sandy Lake, Ontario stand in silence, holding signs pointing to what they call a Canadian failure. Inside, the drum echoes as they start in ceremony, as leaders take to the front to talk about the court case they are involved in this week.
We are in the biggest fight of our lives. This is a national human rights crisis.
That's Raymond Flett, chief of St. Teresa Point. He's talking about the National First Nations Housing Class Action lawsuit that has more than 100 reserves involved.
Most of them are remote First Nations, where they have to rely on ice roads.
He and Chief Dolores Kakagamic of Sandy Lake are at the front of the issue. They say on top of Canada failing to meet its fiduciary obligation to provide safe homes, there's the issue of having winter road access for only 6 weeks of the year, making it harder on the limited infrastructure they do have.
Is the water and sewer, the infrastructure alone. I find that is the most expensive. We recently did a project where it cost us more in infrastructure than the housing itself.
The average house in St. Teresa and Sandy Lake has 15 to 20 people living in it. Majority of the homes have mold. Dolores Fiddler is an elder from Sandy Lake. She says back in 2015, her 19-year-old pregnant granddaughter died from living in a moldy home.
They told me she died of blastomycosis. That's mold. Moldy house and everything that you catch on when you breathe in, that goes into your lungs.
The joint class action argues that Canada is responsible for the housing crisis going back to when the treaties were signed. They say the government's legal team is arguing they are not responsible. Final arguments wrap up later this week. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Now to British Columbia, where an all-Indigenous flight crew with Air Canada took to the skies, setting new heights for aviation. APTN's Tina House has this exclusive story.
Passengers lining up for their flight to Toronto were treated to a special ceremony before they took to the skies. For the second time in history, Today's flight, AC-34, has a crew that's entirely Indigenous. For James Hemsworth, who is the manager of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation for Air Canada, he says it's exciting to see how far so many Indigenous people have come.
When the first Europeans came to North America, we were the guides, we were the healers, we took care of them. And Air Canada still does that in the sky, with our crews, and we give you the best care we can. And having an Indigenous crew just emphasizes that, just brings that home. It's full circle.
All right, everybody, 1, 2, 3.
Everyone here is a veteran in their field, with some having been with the company for over 27 years. For First Officer Victor Tababadung, he says he came from a low-income family and he worked hard to get here, and he's proud of what he has been able to accomplish with his career over the last 18 years. He even hand-beaded this Air Canada medallion himself to combine his love of flying and his culture.
It's a lot of work to get to this point, so being able to do that and travel the world and fly through the sky is pretty amazing. So yeah, it's really, really enriching experience. Very uplifting, you're flying like a bird, right?
Karen Chapman is from the Cowichan tribes on Vancouver Island. She is the in-flight service director and says being with Air Canada for the last 25 years has been a very rewarding career.
It makes us very proud that we get to represent our communities, and we also get to represent our company. The world is a big place. There's so much to see out there, so we get very excited when we get to go into Indigenous communities and we get to do presentations to Indigenous youth about working for the airline industry, because there is a lot to see.
Melanie Cormier is from Bearskin Lake First Nation in Ontario. She has been flying for 27 years. She says flying for Air Canada has changed her life in more ways than one.
I grew up in the North End in Winnipeg, and I never had dreams of aspiring to become a flight attendant. So for something like this to happen to someone who grew up, in a poverty in North End of Winnipeg, if you're from Winnipeg, just to see this and then have this whole new life, that you never would have dreamed possible. So it's normally out of reach for a lot of our people.
And for James, his position was created after Air Canada wouldn't allow the APTN National chief to travel with her headdress last year. Since then, James says the company has made a huge effort to be more inclusive for Indigenous people. Robin Hemsworth is not only a stewardess, but also the daughter of James.
A lot has been changing. My dad has been doing a lot. I'm super proud of everything he's been doing. Members of the Musqueam Nation went on board the plane and drummed a song and brushed it off a cedar before flight AC-35 took off, bound for Toronto. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Pretty cool stuff. Thanks for that, Tina. We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. You can read and watch our stories by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. The annual Wake the Giant event in Thunder Bay is returning this summer. Details on that after the break. Welcome back. It's become a late summer tradition in the city of Thunder Bay, and this year the annual Wake the Giant Music Festival is back with what organizers are calling its most epic lineup yet. APTN's Mike McDonald reports.
Wake the Giant began in 2019 as a community-driven movement in response to racism experienced by Indigenous people and to celebrate Indigenous culture. Musical acts such as Third Eye Blind, Our Lady Peace, and Aqua have performed at past festivals. This year's event will be headlined by the Black Eyed Peas, with performances by Prozac, Neon Dreams, and Crystal Shawanda, to name a few. Since its inception, organizers say the festival has grown in popularity.
The festival and the movement have been resoundingly positive. I think it's been received with open arms. I think that for as much a bad name and reputation that Thunder Bay has, and oftentimes for good reason. I think there are a ton of very good people here with good hearts. It is about kind of waking the hearts and minds of the people in Thunder Bay and the region, and maybe Canada if we're lucky one day.
Thunder Bay is home to Dennis Franklin Cromarty High School, a private school that hosts Indigenous students from across Ontario, including remote northern communities. The organizers of Wake the Giant are teachers at the school, and some of the funds raised go towards school programming. Wake the Giant is unique in that it is a dry festival.
I think, again, people have come in droves and told us how much of an amazing experience they've had at the festival, and I think people are better able to connect with each other in a good way when they're not consuming alcohol.
The festival has also served to educate the performers on Indigenous issues, many of whom have taken the time to meet with the students at Dennis Franklin Cromarty in person.
Most years we've been able to get some of the artists that we have performing at the festival to come in early in the spring and work with the music class, write a song, and then coordinate bringing them up on stage with those artists and performing.
Organizers say the festival would not be where it is without sponsors, some of which have been supporting the school throughout the year.
You have companies like BMO. Not only do they sponsor, but they come in and do a financial literacy class with our math students. You have companies like Home Depot, who have been a sponsor for years. They're giving us money to create a smoking teepee with our woodshop class, which we'll use to smoke meats and tan hides. We have companies like CAA, who paid for our graduate honor roll students last year to go to an NHL hockey game, all paid for.
The 2015 Wake the Giant Music Festival is set for September 6th at the Thunder Bay waterfront, and organizers say tickets are selling fast. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Thunder Bay.
A new play at Winnipeg's Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre is proving that all you need to tell a story is two men and an elevator. Sierra Benton's caught up with the cast and crew of Anishinaabe playwright David McLeod's Elevate, Manag, Idwin, to bring you a behind-the-scenes look.
Anishinaabe theater director Herbie Barnes says he always tells his students,
I often say, don't write a play in a car or in an elevator because it's too stuck, it's too static.
But sometimes you have to break the rules. In playwright David McLeod's Elevate, Manag, Idwin, two men are trapped in an elevator. Tallahassee, who's Indigenous, and Jonesy, who's non-Indigenous. And within the small space, a much larger dialogue about truth, power, and reconciliation unfolds.
The elevator is a metaphor for Canada and how we're traveling together in this small journey, and sort of, I think that that's what the message is how are we going to continue this journey, and how are we going to get to the top floor together in a healthy way where we both can have a shared positive outcome.
McLeod is a member of Manag in Anishinaabe, the CEO of Native Communications Incorporated, and a tireless advocate for Indigenous arts and culture. The play was developed in the Pimuteoan Creator Circle, which supports the creation of new works by Manitoba-based Indigenous artists.
Dave McLeod is an interesting voice, really wonderful voice and comedic, so all of that led to me wanting to be part of this project.
Nolan Moberly plays Tallahassee.
He, like me, I think, uses humor in a lot of ways, likes to keep things light, is very forgiving, like immediately. This is Dave's first play, and he was in for a lot of the rehearsal process. So the more he met me, and the more he kind of found out, because I'm Afro-Indigenous, so he kind of peppered a little bit of that into the character as well.
Trapped between floors, Moberly says the characters are forced to challenge their assumptions and learn from one another.
One character, maybe even both, who think that they know. They know enough. You know, I know this. I know who you are. I know where you come from. I know the troubles you face. Being stuck in an elevator is kind of the perfect vehicle to, David said it himself, to elevate to a better place.
Beyond the characters, Barnes hopes it will challenge the audience, too.
My real hope is that only half of the play takes place in this building, and the second half happens when they're driving home with their families, and tomorrow at the office when the conversations continue about what was said here.
Elevate, Manag Idwin plays at the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre now through May 17th. Indigenous theatregoers get a 50% ticket discount. Sierra Buttons, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
APTN Investigates returns this week with an all-new episode. Journalist Christopher Reed looks into allegations of racism and bullying within Winnipeg City and Manitoba governments. The documentary focuses on how non-disclosure agreements are preventing whistleblowers from going public with allegations of abuse. Here's a preview.
If workers don't have a voice in Winnipeg, then where do they have a voice? Winnipeg's famous labor history is remembered in this monument to the Winnipeg General Strike of 1919. The strike violently culminated when a streetcar was famously pushed over and torched here on Main Street by demonstrators, and the Northwest Mounted Police fired into a crowd, killing 2. 100 years later, these fellows haven't gathered at this spot to stoke their union pride. I've invited them to commiserate about a contemporary quandary they say is silencing the voices of workers anew: non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs. What's it like to meet someone else who's been through something similar to what you're going through?
It's good, it's empowering, it's nice to see other people stepping forward, because that's what we need, and that's what I want to encourage people. Step forward, speak, even if you have an NDA against you.
These guys have both refused to sign NDAs. Is that a good tactic, do you think, to just refuse to sign it?
Absolutely. There's no justification whatsoever for ever signing an NDA unless you've got some secret recipe here that you work for the company you work for. Otherwise, it's a tool to silence people and to protect people who've done wrong.
And you can catch APTN Investigates Unmuted, airing this Saturday on APTN at 6:30 Eastern Time, right after APTN National News Weekend. Now that brings us now to one of this week's web poll questions. And we're asking you a question about last week's APTN Investigates by Kenneth Jackson and the deaths of 2 Mohawk men in 2015 and a new police investigation into their deaths. We want to know if you think police owe the families in Tyendinaga an apology after their botched investigation. Your choices are yes, no, or unsure. You can go to our website aptnnews.ca/polls to cast your ballot. You'll also find that episode, Secrets of the Bay, Chapter 4, on our website. Over to our Ottawa studio now, where Fraser Needham is standing by with a look at tonight's episode of Nation to Nation.
Coming up after the evening news, the 2025 federal election is over, with the Liberals winning a minority government and a 4th term. 12 candidates who identify as Indigenous were also elected across the country. We talked with 2 of them. Liberal candidate Mandy Gull-Masti unseated her Bloc Québécois opponent in a northern riding in Quebec, and Rebecca Chartrand, who also ran for the Liberals and defeated longtime NDP MP Nikki Ashton in northern Manitoba. Nadine Roach and Kathy Surrett are also here to talk about their grassroots initiative to get First Nations voters to exercise their right to cast a ballot. All this ahead on Nation to Nation.
Thanks, Fraser. That's going to be a good one. Time for one last break, but stick around. Stella Standing Bear will be joining us in studio when we return. Welcome back. We've got some big talent coming up next. Stella Standing Bear is bringing smooth rap and heavy lyrics to the radio waves and your favorite music player apps. The Lakota recording artist has awards under her belt like Best Female Hip Hop Artist and Music Video of the Year for her debut single Home Runs. Born in Salt Lake City, Utah, Standing Bear has traveled all over Turtle Island, sharing her lyrical flow with a large and growing audience. She joins us now. Stella, thanks so much for being with us here in studio.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We did speak with you not long ago, but now we're lucky enough to have you here. And I know you've been touring a lot since we last spoke. Headlined the Merciless Savages Festival, showcase for Indigenous musicians taking place in Albuquerque. Can you tell us a bit about how that went?
Yeah, it went amazing. A lot of supporters came out. It was great to see everyone. This was my second time going out to Albuquerque, so it was like a blessing and an honor to be headlining the show. But it takes place during Gathering of Nations, which is the largest powwow in the world. So a lot of Indigenous excellence coming together, celebrating our culture. And yeah, it was a beautiful experience.
I can imagine. We've been pushing to do some shows down there ourselves sometime because it is such a big gathering.
Absolutely.
No stranger to social media as well. You've got quite a following on TikTok and Instagram. How do you think social media apps are helping make wider audiences aware of the talent of up-and-coming musicians?
I would say it's, I'd say modern day marketing. Instead of like commercials or paying for ads and stuff, like it's a free tool, it's a free app on everybody's phone. So I definitely took advantage of that, of like posting consistently, and I was able to find my audience and get exposure. And most of the time when I do bookings, I'm like, how did you find me? They're like, we found you on TikTok, we just had to have you here. So it's been a blessing to use the platform and see success from it.
Well, what do you hope Indigenous youth are taking away from the success that you've had and your music?
That there is no dream too big to achieve. You know, whatever they want to do, I want to motivate them and inspire them to chase that. Yeah.
Any dream collaborations that you'd like to see happen?
Like as far as music? Ooh. Yeah, I would say I would love to collaborate with the Kid Leroy. He's from the Aboriginal people of Australia, so I think it would be really cool to bring two nations together.
Anything on the horizon you wanted to share with your fans out there?
Yes, new music coming soon. I just released the Bear Spirit EP. Pray For You, the music video just released 2 weeks ago off of that project, and now it's streaming on MTV, spanking new.
Nice stuff.
Yeah,
how important is it for you to incorporate, you know, your culture and teachings in your music?
I feel like we're in the music industry. I feel like we're still like getting the recognition that we deserve. So, being loud, being bold, showing the world that we're still here, and opening doors up for future generations as well for this generation now. So.
It seems like more doors are opening up, at least for Indigenous musicians on this side of the border, but it must be even harder down south. What's it been like trying to, you know, have that space made for you down there?
It takes a fight, but I'm willing to do the fight. I'm willing to show up and give it my all.
Looking forward to hearing more of that fight. Stella, appreciate you coming by the studio to talk with us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That's all the time we have. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy Miigwech. We will see you back here tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Time.